Hi, I'm Bill, the Domestic Monk. Welcome to another video and thanks very much for watching. So I'm taking a little break from my video series on the rule of the domestic monk to talk a little bit about our culture. You know, one of my favorite YouTube priests is Father Mark Goring, and he's been saying for years, the world has gone bonkers. And it has gone bonkers. And, you know, I just wonder if people really grasp how crazy it's gotten and where it's likely to go, and probably pretty quickly. You know, I mean, we have to ask ourselves, are we in the world or are we of the world? And when we decide whether we're in the world or of the world, that requires a choice on how we act, how we behave, what sort of things we support, you know, where we get involved. It has so many implications if we're serious about our faith. I want to read a couple of quotes here, Bible quotes. So this is the words of Jesus from John 15:19. If you are of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Here's another one for Romans 12:2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And that's my point. That's the point I was making. When you discern the will of God and what is good and acceptable and perfect, and you compare what's going on in the world. You know, I used to be the biggest fan of the New England Patriots. I mean, when I was a kid, my dad had season tickets. I grew up in Massachusetts. He'd go one weekend with my mom, and then he'd take one of us kids. So we'd hit a couple of games a year, and that's when the Patriots are horrible. It was the old Foxborough Stadium. We'd sit there on these aluminum seats. It was like high school seating, freezing to death, and just watch Steve Grogan get ran all around the field and sacked. It was a mess. But then we went through 20 great years, and I don't think I ever missed a Patriots game. I used to watch every one of them. Same thing with the Boston Celtics. I love the Celtics. I used to watch every one of them. And I paid a lot of money to DirecTV so that I could get those games, because I lived out in California. They weren't local games. So you had to subscribe to DirecTV to get their sports package. But you know, a couple years back, with this whole Black Lives Matter thing hit, and the way they just started embracing and promoting that, you know, I got disgusted by it. The taking of the knee, the disrespect to our country. These people are millionaires, all of them. The coaches, the players, the owners, all of them. And they're giving the middle finger to us. And we are gladly paying them for what? Entertainment? Entertainment? And I thought about it a little bit. I said, that's it. And I pulled out. I canceled my subscription. I haven't watched football in 2 years, except for the Super Bowls. I watched the last couple of Super Bowls. But I've talked to my friends about it. I used to be in a fantasy football league with my good buddies, and that league's continuing. I was a defending champ. Not a little bragging rights there. But I just couldn't bring myself back to invest the time and energy into something that was so opposed to my values as a Catholic Christian and as an American. I couldn't do it. Now let's look at what's going on in this country with this gay and transgender nonsense. It's nonsense. This stuff they're trying to force down our throat about a man being a woman and a woman being a man. It's silliness. It is lies. It is not good. It is not true. It is not perfect. It is contrary to biblical teaching. And yet, people just go along watching the NFL and watching the NBA and supporting Disney and all these other programs that are promoting this stuff that's poisoning our children and poisoning our culture, and directly contrary to what we as Catholics and Christians believe in. But how many people are willing to we are so comfortable in this country, so comfortable for the time being, but I have a feeling that's going to change. We're so comfortable, we're afraid to even give up our entertainment. We can't give up Netflix. We can't give up football. I'll tell you one thing. Since I gave up football, my Sundays are completely different. I can devote myself to attending Mass and spiritual reflection and spending time with my wife and doing things at home instead of sitting around watching that worthless football that I spent years and years and hours of my life watching, to my shame when I look back. But now I can take that time and I can dedicate it more towards improving myself, working on trying to make myself a better person, a better husband, a better father, a better friend, right? And it's just, it's something has to give. Something has to give. This country claims to be a Christian country, but we're silent. And you say, well, I don't support this stuff. If you're giving your money to Netflix or Disney or the NBA or the NFL, then you do support these things. The NFL just came out this week. They are putting a transgender, which is a man who thinks or pretends he's a woman and is going to be in a female cheerleading uniform on the sidelines cheerleading for them. Any Christian who supports that is not being true to himself. He's not being true to the words of Jesus that I just read to you. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Do you think some demented man traipsing around and female cheerleading outfits is good and acceptable and perfect to God? It's absurd. So, at some point, we need to take a stand. We need to discontinue supporting these things. Stop giving them our money. It's vast sums of money, too. But they don't care, we complain a little bit, and then they stop taking the knee in the NFL, but they push this other stuff, right? I mean, the Black Lives Matter stuff, we all know it's not like Black Lives, or it's not about saving lives at all. It is a communist front, and communism is inconsistent with Catholicism. You cannot be Catholic and a communist. You can't be. They're inconsistent. Pope Pius XI told us that 100 years ago, and look at the corruption wrought on this world and the millions of lives lost over the last century due to this man-made government utopia called communism. It's never worked. It always ends in death and suffering, always. And yet, people in this country are ready to embrace it. And it's going to come to this, we see it now, and it's coming more and more forcefully. You can't even speak out against these things, or you get canceled. You can't post your videos, or you get fired from your job, or whatever, for just speaking about these issues. But it'll never stop there. Wait till these people get power. They're going to wield it like a stick, and they're going to start retribution. It always happens. And what are we going to do? I mean, you need to think to yourself, what am I? If you're a Catholic or a Christian in this country, what are you going to do? Are you going to be like the so-called Catholics in England when Henry VIII decided he wanted to divorce his wife, so he's going to split from the church? He went to those Catholics, so-called, and he gave them a choice. Denounce your religion and the Pope. Renounce him. Sign this pledge that you're loyal to me, or else I'm going to steal your property and murder you, right? That's what happened. That wasn't so long ago, right? 1500s. Look what happened in the last century with communism and Nazism and what happened over there in China. How many lives were lost because of the communist so-called revolution over there? It's coming to us, and we're going to have to make decisions. And you got to ask yourself, what are you willing to do? If you're unwilling to cancel a Netflix subscription because you have to be entertained, then I can tell you where you're going to stand. You're going to stand with King Henry VIII and all these other appeasers who just went along. That's where you're going to stand. And these scoundrels know it, and they know it because they see it going on before them right now. Nobody's quitting. They've been pushing this stuff in our face, and people complain, I don't like it, but they pony up, and they watch it because they're entertained. So, it's time we have to ask ourselves what we are willing to do for our faith, for our Lord and Savior. What are we willing to do? Are we even willing to stand for truth, right? God himself is truth. Are we willing to stand for truth or not? Well, we haven't been so far as a society and as a culture. And if we continue this way, truth is going to lose out. And you see it now with men running around acting like women and people acting like it's no big deal. It's no big deal. So I'm going to close with this. I just finished reading this great book. I forget where I came across it, but I read it on Kindle. Let me give you the name of it. It is called The Shadow of His Wings, the true story of Father Gereon Goldmann. So Father Gereon Goldmann was a German seminarian in the seminary at the outbreak of World War II. He gets drafted into the military. Because seminarians had education, they were brought into the SS and used as communication officers. The things he did, he never fired a shot. He was in unbelievable combat situations. His life is amazing. I mean, he met the Pope. He was even though he never completed the seminary, he was ordained a priest while the war was going on because of papal intervention. It's incredible the things that happen in this guy's life. But if you want to look, I mean, we're sitting on our couches and we can't even give up our favorite football team. And you want to look at sacrifice. Look at this guy's life. Read this book, In the Shadow of His Wings. This guy had to face down communism and the French and years as a POW. And then he gets out and he eventually gets through all of that. It's unbelievable how he got through it all. But he did. And then he doesn't just go he's not content to go sit in some parish somewhere. He puts in to go to Japan after World War II, a pagan country. And he spends the rest of his life over there promoting the faith as a missionary in Tokyo and in Japan. Unbelievable what this guy did. Now, I don't know if obviously I haven't lived my life that way, right? I haven't sacrificed to that degree. But I am willing to stand for the truth, and I am willing to stop paying for things that I actually verbally say I disagree with, right? I mean, at least I'm honest enough to say, I'm opposed to that. I'm not going to support it. So, I'll close with this. Are you in the world or are you of the world? Because you're going to have to make a choice. So, as always, thanks very much for watching, and see you in Adelante.